A cowboy spotted an Apache woman washing clothes by the river, but one heartbreaking detail changed everything. Her dress was torn to pieces. His simple act of kindness sparked an unforgettable bond that united two worlds. What happened next will surprise you. If you enjoy emotional Wild West stories filled with hope and humanity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more inspiring adventures. The afternoon sun stretched across the Arizona desert as cowboy Ethan Walker guided his tired horse along the Salt River after delivering a herd of cattle to a nearby ranch. The long journey had left him dusty and exhausted, yet he welcomed the peaceful silence that surrounded the flowing water. Cottonwood trees swayed gently in the warm breeze, birds skimmed across the river's surface, and the sound of moving water washed away the noise of the busy cattle trail. Ethan often chose this route because it reminded him that even in the harsh Wild West, quiet places still existed where a man could think. As he slowed his horse for a drink, something unusual caught his eye near the riverbank. A lone young Apache woman knelt beside the water, carefully washing a few worn pieces of clothing. She seemed completely focused on her work, unaware that anyone had come near. Ethan did not call out or move closer. Years of living on the frontier had taught him that sudden movements could frighten anyone, especially someone who had learned to expect danger instead of kindness. He simply watched from a respectful distance. The woman worked with steady hands, dipping the clothing into the cool river before rubbing away the dust and stains against a smooth rock. Her movements were calm, almost graceful, but there was a quiet sadness in them that Ethan could not ignore. She looked far younger than the hardships written across her face. Every motion suggested patience, strength, and determination, as though she had faced more struggles than most people twice her age. As the woman stood to rinse the last piece of clothing, Ethan noticed the buckskin dress she was wearing. The garment had once been beautifully crafted in the traditional Apache style, but now it was torn almost beyond repair. Long rips crossed the fabric from shoulder to hem, while rough stitches made with thick thread and narrow strips of old leather held the pieces together. Some patches were different shades, showing they had been repaired again, and again over many months. The edges were badly worn, and fresh tears had appeared beside older ones. Even from where he sat on horseback, Ethan could see that the dress had survived countless days of hard travel and difficult living. It was not simply old, it was the only dress she seemed to own. The woman suddenly heard the distant sound of another horse somewhere along the trail. Instinctively, she turned her back toward the open path and crossed her arms over the worst tears in her clothing. She lowered her head, hoping no stranger would notice the damage. That single gesture spoke louder than any words. Ethan realized she was not trying to hide from the world because she was proud. She was trying to protect what little dignity she still had. In that quiet moment, he understood that poverty had forced her into a life where every day meant choosing survival over comfort. His heart grew heavy as he imagined how many people had probably looked at her with judgment instead of compassion. Ethan reached into one of his saddlebags and looked through the supplies he always carried during long rides. There were a few extra pieces of strong cloth left over from repairing saddle blankets, a small sewing kit with sturdy needles and thread, fresh bread wrapped in clean fabric, dried meat, and a little pouch of herbs used for minor cuts and scrapes. He considered walking over to hand them to her, but he quickly decided against it. He knew that approaching too suddenly might frighten her or make her believe he expected something in return. True kindness, he believed, should never place another person under pressure or make them feel indebted. Quietly, Ethan dismounted and walked only as far as a large flat rock near the edge of the river, keeping enough distance to respect her space. He carefully placed the folded cloth, sewing needles, thread, bread, dried meat, and herbs into a neat bundle. Then He stepped back toward his horse before speaking in a calm, gentle voice that carried across the water without sounding threatening. "No payment," he said with a small smile. "Everyone deserves a little dignity." His words were simple, honest, and free of pity. Without waiting for thanks or even looking to see her reaction, Ethan climbed back into the saddle and gently turned his horse toward the trail. For several moments, the Apache woman remained completely still. She watched the cowboy ride away until he became a distant figure between the cottonwood trees. Only then did she slowly approach the bundle resting on the rock. With cautious hands, she unfolded the cloth and discovered the sewing supplies, fresh food, and sturdy fabric. Her eyes filled with emotion she had struggled to hide for a long time. In a world where strangers often greeted her with fear, suspicion, or cold silence, one cowboy had offered kindness without asking her name or expecting a reward. Holding the folded cloth close to her heart, she looked toward the empty trail where Ethan had disappeared. She had no way of knowing that this quiet meeting beside the Salt River was only the beginning of a remarkable friendship, one that would soon change not only her own future, but Ethan Walker's life as well. The following morning, the first rays of sunlight spread across the Arizona desert, painting the cliffs and cottonwood trees with a warm golden glow. Ethan Walker found himself riding back toward the Salt River, unable to stop thinking about the young Apache woman he had met the day before. He had not returned expecting gratitude or praise. He simply wanted to know whether the supplies had been useful and whether she had enough food to continue her journey. As his horse approached the quiet riverbank, he noticed someone standing beside the water, calmly waiting. It was the same woman, but something about her appearance had changed in a remarkable way. The torn buckskin dress that had caught Ethan's attention the previous day had been carefully repaired. The fresh cloth he had left behind had been skillfully stitched into the damaged sections with such care that the garment looked stronger while still preserving its original Apache design. Although the dress still showed signs of age, it no longer reflected hopelessness. Instead, it carried the quiet dignity of someone determined never to surrender. The young woman smiled gently as Ethan approached, her guarded expression replaced by calm confidence. For the first time, her eyes reflected gratitude instead of fear, and Ethan immediately knew his small act of kindness had meant far more than he had imagined. She stepped forward slowly, placing one hand over her heart in a respectful Apache greeting before speaking. "My name is Ayanna," she said softly. "Yesterday, you saw my need, but never tried to embarrass me. Most people look at torn clothes before they look at the person wearing them. You were different." Ethan removed his hat respectfully and introduced himself. He told her he had only done what he believed any decent person should do. Ayanna smiled again, explaining that genuine kindness was rare along the frontier, where fear and misunderstanding often separated settlers and Apache families. His simple gesture had reminded her that compassion could still exist between strangers. After a quiet moment, Ayanna gently touched the repaired sleeve of her dress and looked toward the flowing river. "This dress belonged to my mother," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "She made it with her own hands many years ago. Before she passed away, she told me to wear it whenever I needed courage because it carried her love with every stitch." She admitted that many people had offered to replace the worn garment, but she could never bring herself to throw it away. Every tear reminded her of difficult journeys, while every patch reminded her of her mother's strength. The cloth Ethan had given her allowed her to preserve those precious memories instead of losing them forever. Ethan listened without interrupting. He understood that the value of something could never be measured by its appearance alone. Looking at the repaired dress, he no longer saw worn leather or faded stitching. He saw a daughter's love for her mother, a family's history, and a tradition passed from one generation to the next. Quietly, he told Ayanna that the strongest things in life were often those repaired with care rather than replaced. His words brought tears to her eyes, not because they were extraordinary, but because someone outside her tribe had finally understood the meaning hidden within the old garment she treasured so deeply. Before either of them could say another word, the sound of horses echoed from the surrounding hills. Ethan instinctively turned toward the ridge, where several Apache riders appeared, one after another. Their horses moved confidently through the rocky landscape until they reached the riverbank. Although Ethan rested one hand near his saddle, he made no attempt to draw a weapon. Ayana calmly stepped forward and spoke to the riders in her native language. Their serious expressions softened almost immediately. The tension disappeared as quickly as it had arrived, replaced by respectful silence that surprised Ethan more than any confrontation could have. An older Apache man with silver-streaked hair slowly rode to the front of the group before dismounting. His posture reflected wisdom earned through many difficult years. Ayana introduced him as her uncle, a respected tribal elder trusted by many Apache families. The elder studied Ethan carefully for several quiet moments before extending his hand. "My niece told us what happened here yesterday," he said. "You saw someone in need and offered help without demanding payment, loyalty, or gratitude. Such actions are remembered long after words are forgotten." Ethan accepted the greeting with humility, explaining that he had acted from conscience rather than expectation. The elder nodded thoughtfully before reaching into a leather pouch fastened to his saddle. From it, he removed a beautifully carved wooden token marked with traditional Apache symbols. Placing it into Ethan's hand, he explained that it represented friendship and trust. Any Apache family who recognized the carving would know Ethan came as a friend, not an enemy. He would always be welcomed with respect and allowed safe passage through their lands. Ethan accepted the gift with genuine gratitude, understanding that it was worth far more than gold or silver. As the morning sun rose higher above the desert, two people from different worlds realized that a single act of kindness had begun building a bridge of peace, respect, and lasting friendship that neither of them would ever forget.